Hey everyone, I'm excited to introduce you Salman Mohiuddin, who is he started his own the Salman Sales Academy, and you've been very, very successful being a top performer at huge organizations like Salesforce. I know Hearsay Systems is also really big, and Asana, so some of the top tech organizations in tech sales. And I'm just really excited to introduce you to my community. I'm sure many of my community members already know you, but I'm sure there are some who don't. And just excited to have you on the podcast to dig a little bit deeper about what it's like being a minority in sales that's typically dominated by, I would say white men. That's a fair assessment. So talking a little bit about, because you don't drink as well, so I think that would be interesting for folks who struggle with that, trying to keep up and trying to fit in with everyone. And also we'll go over how you were able to really take that plunge and starting your own business, because the golden handcuffs are real. Like, you make a lot. I'm sure you made a lot of money in your lifetime. So we'd love to share all of that with the viewers today.
Well, appreciated, Davidson. I'm really excited to be on your podcast and speak to your community.
Awesome. Well, I know when we spoke initially, you did mention that drinking. I know for me, drinking gives me a lot of anxiety. Like I tried to quit drinking for a year, but after getting invited to so many sales related events, I sort of resorted back to the mean, which is like I'll drink one drink and I'll sort of just babysit it for like the whole 2-3 hours. So how were you able to manage that in your career?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I don't drink for religious reasons. I'm a Muslim, and I don't drink because of that. And you listen, everyone has their own reasons. I've come across many folks in my career that may not drink or drink very little, whether it be for, health reasons or family reasons or religious reasons and so on. And, sales is often associated with drinking, especially when I started back in '06 at IBM. you know it was a drinking culture, and it still is in some cases, kind of
Mm,
that bro culture where, hey, if you don't drink, then you're not part of the culture. Or, hey, it's like everyone's doing it with
mm,
internally at team gatherings, externally with our clients. It's just part of us. So if you don't drink, it's like, what are you doing? And it
yeah.
felt like that early on, right? It really did, where it was tough, being in environments where drinking was the norm. I remember my first holiday party at IBM. We went to a place for dinner, a nice place, and everyone was getting their drink orders. The waitress was going around the table, and then it came to me, and I just said, "Hey, I'll have a Coke." And then I remember my colleague made a comment beside me, says, "Oh, well, you're a rookie." And
Huh.
I said, "Hey, by the way, I don't drink, for religious reasons." And he said, "Oh, I'm ignorant. I'm sorry." So
Hmm.
I remember another time at another large company I worked with, where you know our boss was giving away holiday gifts, and everyone was getting a bottle of wine. But
Mm,
thankfully, he gave me a gift card because he knew ahead of time I didn't drink. But my teammates were
mm,
like, "Wait a second, you don't drink? What's going on?" They looked at me like I was an alien. So uh, it can be a little challenging, but
mm.
I'm thankful that I've been able to get over that. I'm happy to share more, I feel like.
Yeah, no, that's a great takeaway, right? I would say most Asians well, I'm Vietnamese, right? So, we tend to get really red when we drink. So I've also struggled with similar challenges, and you're right. You do get sort of, for lack of a better word, these bro cultures that tend to promote that. And honestly, I've seen some pretty unhealthy levels of drinking, and honestly careers that were ruined just because of drinking too much.
100%. I've seen it time again. Like, I've been in tech sales for 17 years, and I've seen everything, right? But I think
Mm,
sales is not about drinking. It's not about, like, hey, I'll go to a happy hour, I'll go to a party, but I'll sip on a ginger ale or a Coke. And that's totally okay. I remember in my first half of my career, I used to always apologize for not drinking. Like,
mm,
if somebody said, "Hey, you want to drink? Why don't we grab you something?" And I would say, "I'm sorry, I don't drink." But then
Mm,
I thought about it for a second, Davidson. I was like, wait a second. Why do I have to apologize for being myself? Why do I have to
mm,
apologize for staying true to my values and to
mm,
my self? So I
mm,
dropped the sorry. Now I say, I don't drink. And that's good enough, I feel. And if people want to ask why, I'm more than happy to have a conversation about why I follow a certain religion and I don't drink. And sales, as you know from your experience, you've been around the game for quite some time working at some world-class organizations.
mhm,
Sales is about building relationships with your clients, trusted relationships built on transparency and trust and honesty. It's built
mm,
on Sales is about uncovering real problems that your prospects might be facing and the impact on the organization. It's about transforming the way they do things to drive value for their organization and real business outcomes. So, do you
mm,
need to chug a couple of cold ones to get that done? No, you don't. You need to bring
mm.
value. And that's what stands out from that point of view.
I love that, right? It sounds like you're true to yourself. You honor obviously your heritage, your culture, and that realization that, hey, like, why am I apologizing? I think that's common with a lot of minorities in the sales game, right? We we're trying to code switch, we're always trying to fit in, but at the end of the day, clearly you've been very successful, and it wasn't because you were schmoozing necessarily, but it's because of the deep value you're able to provide to everyone and all the lives you've touched.
You're exactly right. That's 100% bang on because I mean, what I'm seeing more and more is people are, you see a lot of posts on LinkedIn of people that have been 2, 3 years, 4 years sober. And, I think we're moving away from like that drinking culture where it's not absolutely necessary. And I've
Mm,
been part of organizations where almost every company event was centered around alcohol.
mm,
But we're
mm,
living in a culture right now where you have to drive inclusiveness and
mm,
diversity, so not every event has to be centered around that way. We have to cater to the folks that don't drink or have other,
mm.
diversity needs as well.
And I think it does start with having these conversations, right? We're not having enough of these conversations. So I'd be shocked if um, people listening, I'm sure a lot of them, this is the first time they've even thought about it, right? I think it's so ingrained in our culture, the drinking, the late night shenanigans, the whining and dining, that I think sometimes people lose sight of, like, okay, at the end of the day, I'm here to add value. I'm not here to make a friend per se.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you bring up a good point. It's, I have nothing against people who drink, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think there needs to be that mutual respect, right?
Mm,
Hey, just because you drink, I mean, that doesn't mean anything to me. That's totally fine. But you got to respect
yeah.
me as well. It goes
Mm.
both ways.
That's a good point, right? Respect, I think, is both ways, and sometimes um, it's to be earned. How would you say, in world-class organizations such as IBM and Asana and Salesforce, right? Like, how do you go about building your internal brand? Because I feel like there's so many people that are talented at all these organizations you've worked at, and yet you were able to rise and not only be able to perform, but be able to impact a lot of lives, right? How were you able to really differentiate yourself through do you really just being intentional about your the value that you're adding?
Yeah, I think it has to do with those values that you mentioned, staying true to yourself. I believe that, with sales, there's a lot of different personalities and a lot of folks with different qualities. But for me, it's staying true to my values, not drinking, leading relationships with trust and honesty, both internally and externally with my customers. It's
Mm,
built on putting my family first and my faith first before
mm,
work. It's about protecting my time, and it's about making sure, and this one's big for me, making sure that every interaction that I have with someone, whether it be a manager, a colleague, a teammate, or a friend, that it's the best, 30 minutes of their time.
mm,
It's the best 30 minutes of their day. That every interaction you have with someone, internally or externally, should be
mm,
that person's best experience of that day. If you lead with that, then people will enjoy speaking with you. People will see
mm,
value in every touch point that you have. And if you
Mm,
lead with that and having that foundation of your values, then the sky's the limit for me. And that's really what's helped me progress my career to where I'm at today. People ask me,
mm,
"Hey, Salman, you've been in tech sales as an individual contributor for 17 years. I wasn't
mm,
in a management role." And
mm,
there's reasons behind that. There's
yeah.
certain goals I wanted to hit.
Mm,
And people say, "You've been in tech sales for 17 years and you haven't had a drink. How do you do that?" Well, I did it. And it's because of what I mentioned before, those values and those
mm,
interactions and bringing value
mm.
to every conversation that will help you get there.
I love this conversation, right? I don't think we talk about integrity and boundaries too much in sales and specific to um c- it's funny because right now I'm going through a lot of TriNet training, maybe 20 hours of just like ethics, morality, like doing the right thing, and I'm like, man, this is overkill. But I'm like, you know what? I take that back. Like it's not overkill. Like I do think every organization should have 20 hours of intentional training to talk about the right way to do things.
And it's a really, really good point, Davidson, because unfortunately, the perception that salespeople have in the outside
Hmm,
world is, oh, people with their sleazy sales tactics. They compare it to like a used car salesperson
hmm,
or, a telemarketer where they do these sleazy sales tactics just to get the customer to buy in, just to get the customer to buy, whether it's fake end of quarter discounts or a way to trick them to getting them to agree to something.
hmm,
And it's those percentage of individuals that ruin it for the rest of us, right?
hmm,
But in the end, you have to control what you can control. What you can control is being that example for others, leading with empathy, leading with trust, leading with honesty, leading with integrity. And that I found has rubbed off on others.
hmm,
And people, will say that to me from time to time. We're saying, "Hey, you've been a wonderful person to work with because of those qualities." So
hmm.
leading by example will help change that narrative.
That's a good reminder, right? I think sometimes we put folks like yourself on a pedestal, and at the end of the day, like you guys are humans like everyone else, right? Um, how do you go about, because I think most salespeople have the intention that they want to do good in the world, they want to be positive, they want to make a difference, right? But we get pulled by different incentives, different levers, and sometimes we end up doing things that maybe trying to rush a client to sign early to hit our numbers. Like, what do you have to say about building urgency in a respectful and in a um the proper way?
Yeah. So I think we all understand that in the majority of sales environments, there's a lot of pressure, right? There's a lot of pressure on us as sellers. Why?
Yeah.
Because of the fact that we are the primary revenue drivers for an organization. It's on us. It's got to be, it's on us to bring in the numbers. And for most sales organizations, for most salespeople, if you hit your number, you're on top of the world, right? If you're not, you flip that script, right? And your job could be on the line. That's why there's that pressure. That's why there's quotas. And yeah, there is pressure. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of pressure for you to perform. But I think there's a
Yeah.
way to lead with integrity. I always tell people that sales is about a give and get relationship with your clients. You give, but you have to get something in return, right? If you just give to your prospects will be so used to that. All you're going to
Mm,
do is giving, but it's
mm,
about give and get. So, hey, if I'm giving you value, like or through a demo, then I want to get an executive alignment meeting.
mm,
Hey, I want to get the best price from you. Well, I can give it to you, but are we vendor of choice? Have we
mm,
aligned fully to the stakeholders on the value? Have we aligned to
mm,
procurement to understand? Then we can work on something that's mutual beneficial. My saying is that, in a nutshell, like if I've built out a playbook on a sales playbook all the way from prospecting to signature and everything in between over my 17 years. My mantra is, listen, Davidson, if I follow my playbook to a T, if I have my foundation and my values and stay true to myself. If I put 100% effort in everything that I do and I
mm,
still lose the deal, I can live with it.
mm. That's deep. Yeah. It really sounds like, you know, ultimately what they're getting with you is a partner who's going to do the right thing and who's always adding value. And ultimately, you're doing what's going to help them move forward. And, you know, every client I'm sure has different goals, right? But you're very intentional about, hey, like every interaction is going to be purposeful with me.
Yeah, exactly right. Totally right. Yeah.
That's amazing. You know, quite honestly, I don't see too many minority tech sales thought leaders out there. You know, Marcus Chan is probably the only other one I've interviewed, quite honestly, and I've interviewed 300. You know, so um, would love to pick your brain on, you know, why you think that is, and what folks that are maybe on the earlier stages of their content creation journey, what advice you would like to give to them.
Yeah, I think, you know, for me personally, when I first started my sales career, I was usually the only minority on the team, or one of a couple.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, initially it was tough because the folks that I saw getting promoted around me didn't have, you know, weren't people of color, and
Hmm.
sometimes that can be a little disheartening and demotivating. But I knew that I have to control what's. I'm not going to change the world. I can lead by
Hmm.
example. I can lead with my values,
Hmm.
but I'm not going to, you know, change anyone's mind by, you know, I can just lead by example. But what I can do is control what I can control, and that's by working my tail off. That's by, you know, crushing my numbers. That's by providing real value to an organization and to a customer by transforming the way they do business. So if I can control what I can control and I can do it long enough and really stand out from the pack, then
Hmm.
that's going to help me move forward. And it has. Right?
Hmm.
So my advice to every, you know, seller earlier in their career, that's a person of color, that's a minority, control what you can control. And I think it's getting
Hmm.
better. It's getting a lot better over the last
Yeah.
several years where I'm seeing a lot more diversity in sales. And that's what I love to see. And I want to see more of it.
Hmm. That's a great takeaway. Yeah, and the value, and you have a unique perspective as well, right? Because of your religion, your heritage, like the richness of what you offer, right? There's you know, all the Muslim people I know have extreme humility, right? They're just so talented, they're just so thoughtful, and you know, also motivated, also very intentional people as well. Every interaction, it seems very, very thoughtful and kind and giving, it seems like.
Yeah. And you're right. The one thing that I always tell people, you know, whether you're working in, especially working internally with folks, is that, you know, give your time, give to people, show empathy. And if you give something to someone without expecting anything in return, then good
Hmm.
things are ultimately going to find their way to you.
Hmm. That's a great takeaway. So many takeaways from this conversation. Clearly, you have a giver's mindset. This conversation reminds me of The Go-Giver, which is such an incredible book. It sounds like you live the philosophy of the Go-Giver.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate that, Davidson.
Well, how can folks reach out to you and stay in touch with you? I'll post a link to your LinkedIn and your website. Are there any other platforms that you would recommend to so that they can follow your content?
No, I think you nailed it. Follow me on LinkedIn. That's pretty much the only channel that I'm leveraging right now. Hopefully that moves increases in the future. But yeah, I'm really excited. I have a community that I'm relaunching in the next few weeks. I'm going to be relaunching a new website in about a month.
Hmm.
So just follow me on LinkedIn and you'll get all the updates.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. There's just so much takeaways and leading with your values, having integrity, being able to give to others, add value, be authentic and true to yourself, and ultimately, it sounds like you're just very thoughtful and the way you approach relationships, and you're always helping people out when people are reaching out to you for advice and things like that. So
Well, thanks a lot, Davis, and I really appreciate the opportunity and continue to do what you're doing, spreading the good word, bringing on some incredible guests that you mentioned that have been on. and spreading the good value to your community. So good on you for doing that.
Thank you.